Hello everybody, my name is Jan Dufour and I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. I live just outside of Louisville, Kentucky. We finished up our card maps if you've been following me, so now I'm going to do some tips and some hacks on things that you can do that make life a little bit easier. One of the first things I did when I was working with card maps was, rather than try to mess with DSP and figure out whether or not things were the right size, I actually cut just regular paper. And then, I guessed, I thought, well, it looks like it needs about 1.5. And originally I had kind of put them down like this. And I thought, well, that's pretty good, but I want a sentiment. So did I want a sentiment over here? And I decided, because the card map had it that way, that I really wanted them, really wanted it low there, high there, this one over here. And I was able, of course it's crooked right now, but that way I was able to see that this would be, it would still work with the 3.5. And what I could have done was just cut it down to 3.25 and try that if I wanted the spacing to be a little bit different. So use regular paper. The other thing I do, and I'm gonna demonstrate it in the next tip, so that's one. The next one is how to deal with dimensionals. I have nails, so I have an easy time. The reason I say this ties into it is when I need cardstock, because I'm either testing, folds or strengths, or I need the contrast, I use a color that I don't use very often. So Tennessee fans, don't hate me, but orange is not my favorite color. It is in the fall. I'll do pumpkins and leaves in orange, but for the most part, as you can see, for the most part, I never use orange. So just so that I don't keep it for 20 years and have it all faded, I go ahead and use this when I want to cut it up. So I want to show you, well, first of all, the easiest way, let's put some down. I'm using my orange because it's not something I need often. I don't know how many of these I need. The first way, if you got nails, is just to pick it up and peel it off. So that's one way. The other way is you can, poke it first with your fingernail. If you push down in the center, it kind of lifts up the side, so that way you can pull it. That's another way. You can use your pokey tool. Just put it where you want it, stick your pokey tool in there, grab it, and that's another way to do it. And then the last thing, I really shouldn't have put it there because I didn't have another peel question, but I do cut my dimensionals in half. That's because it fits better in my drawer. But what I'm getting at is sometimes all you need is a half. If you have mini dimensionals, that's great. You can go ahead and use those, but I oftentimes, since I have these out for everything else, I'll just cut one in half and put it on there. So those are tips about dimensionals. My next tip is about when you're making multiples and you either die cut or punch a lot of them. And the idea, we'll talk about this in a minute. The idea would be to take this, stick it on a block, and then say I had to make 20 of these, and then make sure that I get it right every time. Takes a little bit of time. So what's easier is for you to make, I'm using my stamp positioner. Again, we'll talk about that in a minute. It is to go ahead and make a template. This is a template, and put it in there. And then go ahead and put the stamp where you want it. And I got to do this without getting my head in the way. Close it. Of course, that picks it up. I have to put this all back. Now I'm going to stamp it and see if it's, first of all, if it's straight. That's the first question. And then it's going to be, is it where I want it to be? So it is very straight. It's awesome. So now I'm going to put the mask back, and you have to put it back in the same way that you had it. I think when I did this one, I had it this way. Yeah. So you have to make sure you put it back in the same way. You can mark it or just don't worry about it. So that looks perfect. Then, and I usually use the thick for this, because then all I have to do is, I call it loading, is load. You know how quickly you can punch out a bunch of them if you're not worried about where it is. There's your first one, and that's perfect. And then we'll just, whoops, I put it out of view so you can't see it. That one's just perfect. But you can quickly do a bunch of these. It really does not take a long time, and it's much faster than just trying to center it each time. And you can do this same thing with a die cut. So this is just a hack to get them done more quickly and have them be perfect every time. There you have it. So that was real quick. All right, I'm going to put my template away for now, and we're going to talk about this contraption I have. If you go to my website, if you are on YouTube watching this, go to stampmesilly, all one word, .com, and search on my website for Stamp Positioner. You'll get, there's two of them. There's one of these and then an L-shaped one, much like what our thingamajig, I think it was called. I can't remember. But anyway, I made this when we lost our Stamparatus. I have purchased several commercial ones. I'm still working with them. I'm not in love with them. They're not bad products. I would never badmouth another product, but they don't do what I want them to do. And the problem is because the Stamparatus used to do everything that I wanted it to do. So I've adapted. Like I said, I do have commercial ones and I do use those, you know, when I'm working on my own, but there's a video on how to make this. You have to buy 4 of these cases at a time, and I think they're $10. So you only use one of them. Save the 3 because I'll show you some ways to use them. But then I glued a magnet down, and this is a piece of acetate down so that if I get anything on it that needs to be cleaned off, I can do that. And this works very, very well. It's not a Stamparatus, but I would venture to guess that it works almost as good, if not as good, as any commercial product I've purchased. So that being said, it's just an idea, an inexpensive way to make yourself a stamp positioner. Here's another use of cases. I do use cases for all kinds of things. We're going to talk about stamp or card layer sizes again on my website at stampmesilly.com under free cards and templates. There's one, I think it's the very last one, cards and envelope sizes. And basically what I've done is the small one is a 3x3. The envelope measures 3 1/8 by 3 1/8. It's too small for a half layer. The first layer would be 2 3/4 by 2 3/4. Of course, it's small. The difference between the two, if I wanted a 1 1/2 layer, is too small for that, and so is the 2 1/2. However, the one that's highlighted in yellow is the standard A2 card, and if I wanted my first normal layer, it would be 4 by 5 1/4. If I wanted a razor thin one, I would make it 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. So I call that a half layer. That's the first layer. And again, we're decreasing by basically 1/8 of an inch until you get to the second, which is 1/4 of an inch smaller than the first layer, etc., through the third layer. You can just use the chart and measure it out. If you want to play to see what you like most, I've actually created all of these and more sizes. So you can say, oh, this one with this one in the background makes it a very thin layer. I like that or I don't like that. And I want to try it on the next layer up size. And I then can look at it and say, oh, I like that depth of layer around it better. So that's essentially what that is. I don't have anything for this. If you are very interested in getting the labels for this, I can redo them or find them. I don't know where they are now, but basically if you just cut out these, you're going to be using more than you actually do. But this is just another way to use the extra stamp cases you get. All right, so layers. Of course, I laminate mine, which is nice if you have a laminator. And that way I leave it up on my desk and I can see when I'm working with layers. Okay, after layers, we have back up and punches. I already did that. All right, so now we're making a flag. I've been doing that a lot lately because there's been a lot of flags on our card maps. But people sometimes freewheeling, it makes them nervous. So I've got a hint on your scissors. Let's see if you can see that. Hang on. There's a black line right there that I made with a Sharpie. So the purpose, I normally don't care. I mean, I can figure it out myself. But if you want to be precise, bring the paper in as far as that. Let's see. I don't know if you can see that, but as far as that line, cut up the center, and then I usually pull this one back a little bit, or lighter colors I can see. You go to the corner, from the corner to the center, and there you have your flag. And when you go on this side, because you have that line there, it's going to be the same length. Indented at the same length. So that gives you the flag. And it doesn't matter how fat it is. Again, if I just go up to the line and make my cuts, they come out, I wouldn't say perfect, but they come out well enough for me to use. How's that? All right, there's flags. And I have one more tip. And this one is for making a faux bow. There's a lot of ways. Some people, when they make a faux bow, they just go back and forth. Let me see if I can do this. Back and forth 3 times or as many times as they want. And then put a adhesive glue dot. Gosh, I couldn't think of what I wanted to call them. And leave it like that. And that's one way to make a faux bow. But I've been making my faux bows, first of all, if it's too curly, you can kind of this actually does the opposite of what happens if you do this with ribbon. It kind of straightens it out a little bit. And it doesn't matter if it's a little bit wiggly, but it is harder to work with. So I fold mine in half. I bring my ends down fairly close. I decide how much of my ends I want showing, and I would say about there. I put a glue dot at the juncture where I want just my strings to hang. I pull that off. So now there's a glue dot there behind. I don't know if you can see that either. Probably not, but anyway, I got an extra glue dot on my hand. Then I take the center and I fold it down. So I'm not just squishing it down this way. I'm kind of rolling it over the top from the center, and I'm putting that down on the glue dot. Then I'll place my bow where I want it. And then I can take that sentiment that I just threw out. That's too big. Let's take the smaller one. And I can put my sentiment across there. And it's much flatter than when you make a knot. You can put some dimensionals either side and that won't go anywhere. I hope you enjoyed all of these little hacks that I have. I hope you find some of them helpful. If you have any questions or if you want to see anything else hacked, let me know. I might have a hack, I might not, but I can work on it for you. Consider subscribing. I post once a week on Wednesdays, and sometimes if there's a flash sale. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.